Captain Emily Carter crouched low in the dense underbrush, her heartbeat thudding in her ears louder than the distant gunfire. The moon cast a cold silver light across the rugged terrain, illuminating the jagged rocks and twisted trees that surrounded her. Each step forward was deliberate, measured. She had been trained for moments like this, covert operations behind enemy lines, but no amount of training could fully prepare anyone for the chaos of a mission gone wrong. The night had started with precision. Emily's squad had moved silently through the valley, their communications minimal, relying on hand signals and practiced instincts. Their target was a high-value enemy outpost, rumored to house critical intelligence about upcoming operations that could save countless lives back home. Emily had briefed her team thoroughly, drilled the route, and anticipated contingencies, but nothing could have predicted what was about to happen. A flash of movement caught her eye, too fast, too coordinated to be wildlife. Emily's instincts screamed. "Ambush!" she shouted, barely able to maintain composure. The valley erupted into chaos. Explosions ripped through the night, sending dirt and splintered branches flying. Gunfire shattered the silence, echoing across the cliffs, and screams pierced the cold air. Emily dove behind a fallen tree trunk, her pulse racing, sweat stinging her eyes. Her squad was immediately scattered. Corporal Diaz, the point man, had been pinned down by heavy fire. Lieutenant Sanders yelled for cover before disappearing into the smoke. Emily's comms were dead. No response, only static. The extraction plan she had memorized was now irrelevant. In moments, the mission had collapsed. Emily's mind raced, calculating every possible escape route, her training kicking in. She couldn't afford to panic. Panic got people killed. Movement to her left, a shadow moving between the rocks, made her freeze. A soldier? A scout? Emily's fingers tightened around her rifle. She held her breath, counting seconds that stretched into eternity. The shadow passed, oblivious to her presence. One lucky step, one mistake, and it could all be over. She pressed her back against the cold earth, silent and watchful, the taste of fear sharp in her mouth. Her eyes scanned the chaos. Smoke rose in thick black pillars from the destroyed vehicles and supply crates. Sparks from burning metal illuminated the faces of enemy soldiers, glinting in their helmets. Emily realized with a jolt she was alone. Her squad had vanished, and the extraction point was unreachable. She was deep in hostile territory, with no backup, limited ammunition, and no clear path to safety. She forced herself to move, crawling low across rocks and dirt, using the terrain as cover. Every step was a negotiation with danger, every shadow a potential death sentence. Emily knew the first rule of survival: stay alive, assess, and adapt. She needed a plan, and fast. The first hours were a blur of hiding, evading, and listening. The enemy was sweeping the area, searching for survivors. Emily counted every footstep, every snapped twig, every whisper of movement in the night. She was cold, her muscles aching from the effort, but surrender was not an option. She thought of her family back home, of the promise she had made to come back alive. That thought steeled her resolve. At dawn, Emily found a shallow ravine to rest. She pressed herself against the rocky wall, taking stock of her injuries. A shallow cut along her arm, bruises from debris, but nothing that would stop her. She scavenged what supplies she could from a fallen soldier's pack: a bottle of water, a few energy bars, and a half-empty magazine of ammo. Every little bit mattered. Her mind raced as she planned her next move. The terrain ahead was treacherous, a network of cliffs, forests, and open fields. The enemy outpost was somewhere ahead, and she had no idea how many soldiers were hunting her. She needed to move carefully, quietly, and strategically. Emily relied on her training, her instincts honed through years of grueling military preparation. She was a soldier, and soldiers adapt. Hours passed in tense silence. Emily moved like a shadow, weaving through the trees and rocks. She set small, improvised traps to mislead any pursuers, branches arranged to snap under weight, rocks placed to roll and alert her if someone approached. It was a dangerous game of cat and mouse, and Emily was both predator and prey. Memories of her training sessions flooded her mind. Long nights in the field, drills in survival tactics, marksmanship under pressure. Emily recalled her instructor's words: adapt, improvise, survive. Your mind is your greatest weapon. Emily never understood the weight of those words until now. Each decision carried life or death consequences. Every misstep could mean capture or worse. By mid-morning, Emily found herself overlooking a small village. From her vantage point, she could see enemy movement, patrols, supply runs, and lookout posts. The intelligence she had come for might be there, and at the same time, she knew the danger was immense. She had a choice: risk detection to gather information that could save lives, or focus solely on survival. Her comms crackled for a brief second, a flicker of static, a whisper of hope, but it was gone before she could respond. Emily clenched her jaw. She was truly alone. Yet she refused to give up. The mission was bigger than her fear. The lives depending on the information, the team she had lost, they all fueled her determination. Hours turned into an endless march through the rough terrain. Her body ached, her throat was dry, and hunger gnawed at her, but she pressed on. She had a rhythm now, moving quietly, observing constantly, thinking 3 steps ahead. Each narrow escape from patrols reinforced her resolve. She was not just surviving, she was learning, adapting, and becoming a force the enemy would not anticipate. By nightfall, Emily found a temporary hideout in a crumbling barn on the outskirts of the village. She cleaned her wounds as best she could, rationed her food, and listened to the distant sounds of the enemy camp. Her mind was restless, replaying the ambush over and over, analyzing every decision, every mistake, every lucky escape. As she settled in, Emily allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. Fear still lingered, an ever-present shadow, but so did determination. She whispered to herself, "I will survive. I will complete this mission. I will see my team again." Her voice was soft, almost drowned by the night, but it carried the weight of a warrior's promise. The night stretched on, silent except for distant patrols and the occasional bark of a dog. Emily prepared herself mentally for the next day, knowing it would bring new dangers, new choices, and new battles. She was behind enemy lines, alone and hunted, but she was far from defeated. Above her, the stars glimmered coldly, indifferent to her struggle. But beneath that indifferent sky, Emily Carter, a lone soldier, had made her first stand, and the enemy would soon learn that she was not someone to be underestimated. Cliffhanger. Somewhere in the darkness, enemy footsteps approached the barn. Emily's fingers tightened around her knife, eyes scanning the shadows. This night would test her like never before. Survival was no longer just instinct, it was a battle of wits, courage, and will. The first light of dawn cast a gray hue over the shattered village. Emily Carter emerged cautiously from the barn, her senses stretched taut like a bowstring. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the distant bark of a dog, even the subtle snap of a twig beneath her boots could signal danger. The ambush had left her wary, every nerve alert, and yet she had to move. Staying in one place too long was as dangerous as moving blindly into enemy hands. Her supplies were scarce: a half-empty bottle of water, a few energy bars, a single magazine of ammunition, and her wits. Emily pressed on through the rugged terrain, slipping between the shadows of ruined buildings and jagged rocks. She relied on every lesson learned from her grueling army training: how to stay quiet, how to track enemy movements, how to survive when hope seems distant. She crouched behind a collapsed wall, observing a patrol of enemy soldiers as they passed the main road. Their uniforms were unfamiliar, but their methodical precision spoke of trained combatants. Emily's pulse quickened, but she forced herself to remain calm. She had to outthink them, not outgun them. A direct confrontation would be suicide. Hours of careful movement led her to a small stream. She knelt to drink, her hands shaking from exhaustion and fear, but the water was a relief. For a fleeting moment she allowed herself to feel human. Thirst quenched, muscles eased slightly, but the silence was deceptive. Somewhere the enemy was watching. Always watching. Memories of her training surfaced. Night exercises in freezing mud, survival drills in dense forests, long marches with minimal rations. Each drill had been grueling, but now they were a lifeline. Emily adjusted her plan as she moved, thinking several steps ahead, using the terrain to her advantage. Every rock, every tree, every shadow became part of her strategy. By midday, Emily found herself on a steep incline overlooking an enemy supply route. She observed trucks moving slowly through the valley, soldiers walking between them. Intelligence she could gather here would be invaluable, but the risk was monumental. One wrong move and she would be spotted. She crouched low, analyzing patterns, memorizing guard rotations, and calculating the shortest path to avoid detection. She pressed on, taking a route that forced her through dense forest. Branches tore at her uniform, and every rustle of wildlife made her freeze. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, her energy was low, and the shadow seemed to stretch endlessly. But Emily reminded herself of her mission. Surviving alone was not enough. She had to complete her objective. Nightfall brought a temporary reprieve. Emily found a secluded hollow beneath a cluster of trees where she could rest, patch minor wounds, and tend to her gear. She rationed her remaining food with care, chewing slowly and savoring every bite. Her hands shook as she drank the last of her water, a sobering reminder of the precariousness of her situation. Alone in the darkness, her thoughts wandered to her lost teammates. Corporal Diaz, Lieutenant Sanders, Sergeant Kim, names that haunted her. Were they alive, captured, dead? She had no answers, only the memory of the explosion that had separated them. Emily allowed herself a single tear, but only one. Emotion was a luxury she could rarely afford. She whispered a vow under her breath. I will survive. I will honor you. Suddenly, movement in the underbrush snapped her back to reality. Emily froze, every muscle coiled like a spring. 2 enemy scouts were passing nearby, their flashlights cutting through the shadows. She pressed herself flat against the ground, holding her breath. The patrol lingered, almost sensing something, but eventually moved on. Emily exhaled slowly, realizing how close she had come to capture. The following hours were a test of endurance. Emily had to navigate treacherous cliffs, dense undergrowth, and hidden enemy checkpoints. At one point, she encountered a small ravine too wide to jump. Improvising, she used a fallen tree as a bridge, inching across with meticulous care. One slip could mean plunging into the rocky abyss below. Her fingers scraped against bark and stone, blood mixing with sweat, but she reached the other side safely. By morning, Emily stumbled upon a small village on the edge of a forest, seemingly abandoned. She moved cautiously through the empty streets, noting supplies that could aid her mission: canned food, bottled water, and a few discarded weapons. Her pulse raced as she searched. Every shadow could conceal an enemy soldier, but she had no choice but to take the risk. Survival meant using whatever the world offered her. Inside a partially destroyed home, Emily found a mirror and took a long, hard look at herself. Dirt smeared her uniform, blood caked on her arms, eyes wide with exhaustion yet blazing with determination. The face staring back was tired but resolute. She whispered to herself, "One step at a time, keep moving." She set up small traps around the perimeter of the building, a few scattered rocks to alert her of intruders, branches arranged to snap under weight, tiny noisemakers fashioned from scrap metal. Every precaution mattered. Every small edge could mean the difference between life and death. As night fell again, Emily moved silently towards higher ground to observe enemy movements. From her vantage point, she saw a convoy preparing to leave the village. Her pulse quickened. This was an opportunity. Gathering intel on their route could save lives if she managed to relay it back, but she also recognized the danger. Approaching too closely could expose her. She waited, hiding in the shadows, watching every movement with patience honed by fear and experience. Hours passed slowly, and Emily's mind wandered back to simpler times. The laughter of her siblings, the warmth of her family home, the safety of familiar surroundings. That life felt impossibly distant now. She shook her head, forcing herself to stay in the present. She couldn't afford distraction. Her survival depended on focus, calculation, and nerves of steel. As dawn approached, Emily made her decision. She would gather the intelligence without engaging the enemy directly. Using the terrain, her knowledge of enemy patterns, and her instincts, she planned a route that minimized exposure. Her body ached, hunger gnawed at her, and fatigue threatened to drag her down, but she pressed on. The mission demanded it. Every step forward was a reminder. Behind enemy lines, alone, hunted and exhausted, Emily Carter was more than a soldier. She was a force of nature, a survivor refusing to give in. And this was only the beginning. Cliffhanger. As Emily neared the convoy, she froze. Enemy guards were moving in unexpected directions. Her carefully laid plan might have been compromised. She had to make a split-second decision: move forward and risk exposure, or retreat and lose the chance for critical intelligence. The night held its breath, and Emily's fate hung by a thread. The dawn mist clung to the forest like a shroud, and Emily Carter crouched atop a ridge, surveying the enemy convoy below. Her heart pounded, not with fear this time, but with a steely determination. She had survived ambushes, harsh terrain, and endless hours of isolation, but now she knew she couldn't simply remain in hiding. The intelligence in that convoy could shift the balance of the war, and only she could secure it. Every muscle in her body ached, her uniform torn, her hands blistered, yet she felt sharper than ever. Her mind worked in precise calculations: guard rotations, vehicle speeds, patrol patterns. Emily's instincts had become almost superhuman after days of relentless pressure. The enemy was confident, organized, and heavily armed, but she had something they didn't: unpredictability. Crouching low behind a cluster of boulders, Emily crafted her plan. It was audacious. She would infiltrate the convoy's temporary camp at night, disable communications, and retrieve the critical intel. The risk was astronomical. One misstep, one shadow crossing in the wrong place, and it would be over. But Emily thrived under pressure. Fear fueled her focus, and focus would be her weapon. As darkness fell, she moved silently through the undergrowth, a ghost among the trees. She avoided open areas, using the terrain to her advantage. Each step was calculated, every sound measured. When a patrol passed nearby, Emily froze, heart hammering, blending seamlessly with the shadows. She remembered her training in urban and rural infiltration: how to move silently, how to anticipate enemy movements, how to remain invisible when the world was hunting her. Reaching the convoy, she paused, analyzing the perimeter. Guards patrolled in pairs, rifles slung across their chests, flashlights cutting narrow beams through the darkness. Emily noticed a small gap between two tents, poorly lit, leading to the communications tent. That would be her entry point. Stealth, speed, and precision, those were her allies tonight. Sliding silently over loose gravel, Emily approached the tents. Her fingers worked quickly, disabling a small generator to cut power to a section of the camp. Darkness swallowed the area, giving her cover. She moved like a shadow between tents, every step deliberate. A guard's dog barked suddenly, and Emily froze, holding her breath. After what felt like an eternity, the barking ceased. The animal had moved on. She exhaled slowly, pulse steadying. Inside the communications tent, the room was a chaotic hive of activity: wires, radios, and surveillance equipment buzzing under fluorescent lights. Emily's eyes scanned the layout, noting the location of critical documents and computer terminals. She moved with practiced efficiency, disabling equipment, copying files, and taking note of enemy plans. Every second counted. The guards would notice the blackout sooner than she expected. Outside, footsteps approached. Emily pressed herself against the wall, listening intently. 2 guards passed, their flashlights swinging dangerously close. Her pulse raced, but her breathing remained controlled. She had trained for these moments, had rehearsed in her mind countless scenarios, and now it all converged. Her mind was a machine, calculating risk, anticipating movement, and exploiting weaknesses. As Emily exited the tent, documents clutched tightly. Emily realized the enemy was mobilizing. The blackout had triggered alarms. Soldiers scrambled, shouting orders, guns raised. Emily sprinted toward the tree line, weaving through the shadows. Bullets tore through the ground near her feet, dirt spraying, and she felt the searing sting of a graze on her shoulder. Pain shot through her, but she refused to slow. Adrenaline surged, propelling her forward. She reached a natural ravine that offered cover, crouched low, and set a series of improvised traps she had prepared earlier. Rocks and sticks created noisemakers to mislead pursuers. Emily used every trick she knew: misdirection, stealth, and terrain mastery. The enemy fell into some traps, buying her precious moments. She pushed on relentlessly, every step a testament to her determination. Hours passed as Emily navigated the dark forest, her body screaming in protest. Hunger gnawed at her, her shoulder throbbed, and exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. Yet she pressed on. The intel she carried could save countless lives. The memory of her lost squad fueled her resolve. She could not, would not fail. She paused atop a ridge overlooking the enemy's temporary outpost. Smoke from a small fire curled into the night sky. Below, guards searched systematically, unaware that one lone soldier had just dismantled their communications and stolen vital intelligence. Emily crouched low, her chest heaving, sweat mixing with dirt and blood. She allowed herself a fleeting moment of triumph, but knew the hardest part was yet to come: extraction. A river ran through the valley, wide and fast-flowing, but it offered a path toward friendly lines. Emily knew she had to cross it, yet enemy snipers had positioned themselves along its banks. Every possible route was a gauntlet. She studied the currents, the positioning of trees and rocks, and devised a plan. Timing, speed, and silence were paramount. As Emily descended toward the river, she reflected briefly on the journey that had brought her here: the ambush, the solitude, the relentless pressure of surviving alone. She felt the weight of her team, the memory of their faces, their laughter, their courage, and she vowed silently that she would honor them, not just by surviving, but by completing this mission. Reaching the riverbank, Emily assessed the situation. The sniper's laser glinted across the water, a deadly red dot marking her potential path. She waited, muscles coiled, every sense alert. Then, in a calculated burst, she leapt into the river, using the current to carry her out of the sniper's line of sight. Cold water assaulted her body, pulling at her strength, but she fought against it, strokes long and powerful, every movement precise. Bullets splashed into the river around her, some striking the bank where she had just stood. Emily's body burned from exertion, her lungs screamed for air, but she kept moving. She reached a partially submerged log and used it to steady herself, peeking over the surface to gauge the distance. Another burst of strokes, another push against the current, and she was across. Gasping for breath on the far bank, Emily pulled herself onto solid ground. Her shoulder burned, cuts stung, her clothes were soaked and heavy, but she was alive. Behind her, the enemy searched frantically, unaware she had slipped through their grasp once again. She clutched the intel tightly, knowing it could alter the outcome of the conflict. Night faded, and the first light of dawn revealed the path to the rendezvous point. Emily moved cautiously, but with renewed determination.
She had turned the tables. She was no longer only surviving, she was actively shaping the battlefield, using her skills, courage, and intelligence to strike where the enemy least expected.
Dawn broke over the jagged horizon, painting the sky in streaks of pale orange and gray. Emily Carter's body ached from days of relentless movement, wounds raw and muscles screaming in protest. Every step felt heavier than the last, yet the weight of the critical intelligence in her hands reminded her that she could not falter. The extraction point was still miles away, a narrow clearing where a friendly unit awaited her arrival, but reaching it meant traversing some of the most dangerous terrain she had yet faced. She moved cautiously, every sense sharpened. The enemy, aware that something had gone terribly wrong, had increased patrols along likely escape routes. From the ridge above, Emily spotted soldiers combing the valley, their movements coordinated, systematic. She would have to outsmart them one final time. Every instinct, every ounce of training was now her only weapon. Ahead lay the river, the same river she had crossed partially the night before. But now, dawn light revealed the positions of enemy snipers, their scopes glinting like cold steel under the rising sun. Emily crouched behind a boulder, scanning the area. One misstep and she would be cut down. Her mind raced. She had only seconds to decide, wait for distraction or risk a bold move to cross immediately. Summoning every shred of courage, she chose the latter. Using the cover of dense shrubs and the jagged rocks lining the riverbank, Emily inched toward the water. She timed her movements carefully, moving only when the sniper's gaze was momentarily diverted. A sudden shout from below, a patrol discovering a false trail she had set, drew their attention away, giving her a fleeting opportunity. With a deep breath, Emily plunged into the icy current. The water was merciless, pulling at her, chilling her to the bone. Bullets struck the river with deadly precision, splashing around her, some barely missing, others sending jagged waves toward her. She kicked and pushed against the relentless flow, teeth gritted, lungs burning. Every stroke was calculated, every movement a matter of life or death. Halfway across, a sniper fired again. Emily dove beneath the surface, letting the current sweep her out of the line of fire. Emerging moments later, she clung to a partially submerged log, letting it carry her safely to the far bank. Cold, wet, and exhausted, she pulled herself onto solid ground, shivering violently. Her body was screaming for rest, but the mission and survival demanded she move on. The forest beyond the river offered some cover, though the terrain was uneven and treacherous. Emily pressed forward, using fallen logs, rocks, and natural hollows to stay hidden. Her mind calculated every possible threat, every potential escape route. Exhaustion weighed heavily, but fear alone did not drive her anymore. Determination did. Her resolve was sharper than any blade. Hours passed as she navigated through the dense forest, staying low, silent, and focused. She stopped occasionally to drink from small streams, careful not to leave a trail or make a sound. Hunger clawed at her stomach, but she forced herself to ration energy and keep moving. Memories of her fallen teammates haunted her, yet gave her strength. She had survived this long not for herself, but for them, and for the lives that depended on the intelligence she carried. By late morning, Emily reached the clearing where her extraction team was scheduled to meet her. The sight of soldiers waiting with weapons ready sent a surge of relief through her, but caution remained. She scanned the surrounding hills for any hidden threats. The enemy could still be lurking, waiting for an ambush. Emily had learned the hard way that complacency was deadly. She approached slowly, signaling her identity. The soldiers recognized her immediately, rushing to assist her as she collapsed to the ground from sheer exhaustion. They helped her to a secure location, wrapping her in blankets and checking her injuries. Emily handed over the critical documents, her hands trembling slightly from fatigue and adrenaline. The intelligence she had risked everything for was intact, ready to be relayed to command. As medics tended to her wounds, Emily allowed herself a moment of reflection. The mission was a success, yet the cost was etched deeply into her mind and body. She thought of the squad members she had lost, the friends whose lives had ended in the chaos of the ambush. She whispered their names under her breath,
a vow that their sacrifice would not be forgotten. Later, sitting with her team in a temporary command post, Emily recounted the journey, every decision, every risk, every harrowing moment of survival. She emphasized not just the tactics, but the mental endurance it required. Her story was a testament to the resilience of a soldier who refused to give up, even when completely alone, behind enemy lines, and facing impossible odds. Despite her fatigue, Emily felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had not only survived, but had actively shaped the outcome of the mission. The intelligence she delivered could prevent future attacks, save countless lives, and tip the balance in a war that seemed endless. For Emily, survival was not the end goal, it was a means to ensure the success of something far greater than herself. That night, as she lay in a tent wrapped in blankets, Emily allowed herself a brief respite from the constant tension that had defined the past days. Her mind wandered to simpler times, her family, the moments of laughter, the comfort of home. But she knew she had changed irrevocably. The experience had forged her into something stronger, sharper, and more resilient than she had ever imagined. The fire outside the tent crackled softly, shadows dancing across the canvas walls. Emily closed her eyes, feeling the weight of exhaustion and relief in equal measure. She was alive, she had survived, she had accomplished what no one else could. And though the war was far from over, she had proven that courage, intelligence, and unyielding determination could overcome even the most insurmountable odds. Her thoughts drifted to the future. The battlefield had tested her body, mind, and spirit to the limit, but Emily knew one truth above all: a soldier never quits. She had faced death alone, navigated impossible dangers, and emerged triumphant. And when the next mission came, she would meet it with the same unwavering resolve. Final beat. Emily gazed out into the horizon, eyes reflecting both the scars of battle and the fire of determination. The mission was over, but her journey as a soldier, the one who risked everything to survive, had only just begun.